If you knew, I'll rip off your head, shove it so far up your freaking ass, you'll be copped up together for 4 freaking months. I don't care what you say. If you ever touch him again, I will freaking kill you with a full shotgun and blow your damn head off. Do you understand? Little worthless piece of crap.
I just want you to stay in the line with me. We need to know what's going on. Okay. I am on the floor. Okay. You've got the kids there. Right. And I've got every student in this library on the floor. You better stay on the floor. Is there any way you can lock the doors? Smoke is coming in from out there. Okay. The gun is right outside.
Hey guys, I'm Jeremy and I'm here at the Columbine Memorial. It was here 25 years ago on April 20th, 1999 that 2 senior students shot and killed a dozen students and 1 teacher and wounded several others. And of course scarred people and their families for the rest of their lives, and obviously in part contributed to many other school shootings in general over the last 25 years. So a really sad thing. Today, I'm going to basically give you a brief overview of what happened, but more go into sort of the background, as well as show you the areas around here, because they couldn't have grown up in a more beautiful area. So I'd like people to kind of see a little bit more of that, because I don't see too many videos about that. So I'll show where one of the guys, Dylan, grew up. And if I have time, I'll go over to where they used to shoot their guns at a shooting range, and then also show where they got arrested. About a year before the incident. So Columbine is named after a flower, actually, that's native, I guess, in this part of the United States. And Columbine High School is located in Littleton, a suburb southwest of Denver, about 35 minutes. Yeah, really moving. They have plaques that I'll show you at the end of the video with all of the 12 students who were shot and the 1 teacher, with some either quotes or things that other people wrote about them. And then on the outer area here, you've got dozens of different quotes and things from different faculty and students about what happened at that time and how they felt about it. So yeah, really moving, really sad, just an insane event. This kind of resonates with me, and I think what people should consider. I hope people come to this place to think about how they themselves can be better people rather than come here to reflect on death. And the other thing I reflect on too here is just how sad it is. I mean, the amount of things I've done in the last 25 years of my life and that those 12 kids and that teacher would have had. You know, I've gotten to travel the world and do so many amazing things since high school. And these 2 idiots, you know, took that away from so many people. And the worst part is that, like, you know, they're going to graduate a month later and they wouldn't have even seen most of these people again, right? They probably would have moved off to a different college or gone in the military or whatever. But like, it's just like, this doesn't matter. So for any of the people out there that, you know, you're having a hard time in high school or whatever, and there's bullies or whatever the problems you have in life, like, this isn't it. I mean, I barely even remember most of high school. Like, I remember hanging out of school with my friends and doing cool things, but school itself is just like the smallest part of, you know, the last 44 years I've been alive. So I know at the time it means everything to you, but there's so much after that. So the school is just behind me. The school's in session right now, and I'm up on the hill here next to the area, and then the memorial is down here below. And actually, the original memorial, right after the shooting, they had 15 crosses up here. The 13 victims and the 2 perpetrators. And obviously some parents were pissed about that. So think they took those down of Dylan and Eric, the two shooters. So now the memorial's down here. I guess it kind of makes sense that they wouldn't like put a big memorial on top of the hill so like everyone at school could still see it. It's like, it's good that it's here below, but maybe not something everyone wants to be reminded of every day when they look out the window. So you can see, no doubt, it's just such a beautiful place out here. Just one of the last places in the world you think something that crazy would happen, which of course is part of the reason why it probably is so infamous, is that it isn't in some poor area. You know, you've got people in Chicago that are shot every weekend and stuff, and it just doesn't make the news because of the demographics, right? And this is like a middle to middle upper class area, you know, in a really good school with a lot of good funding. So it's kind of the last spot you'd think something like that would happen. So I'll explain to you the tragic event that happened on that day on April 20th, just past 11. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold pulled up to the school in two different parking lots. And although this story is so famous for the shootings, it was actually a failed bombing attempt. They had actually gone in with a couple of propane tanks and were going to hopefully detonate them in the cafeteria, which would have killed probably 400 some people. And so that was their main objective. And then as those people ran out, they were just going to start shooting at people. And then they even had bombs in their cars. So when the rescue people came, they were going to detonate those. So it was just going to be an absolutely insane bombing event that could have been worse than the Oklahoma City bombing just a few years prior. And so they walked in the cafeteria, placed a couple propane bombs and had them on a timer. And then at the same time, they had two decoys out about a mile south of Columbine so that the emergency crew or fire trucks would have been diverted down that way. So those went off around that time. And so some of the emergency people would have seen that fire and were able to put that out. And because the bombs didn't go off, they basically were like, all right, the bombs didn't go off, let's move in. And they start off, they shot a girl and another guy right at the front steps of the school, and they went in. And they actually ended up killing most of the people in the library. They were basically going up to the library and down into the cafeteria. And so the rampage lasted about 50 minutes. And then Dylan and Eric pulled the guns on themselves and said 3, 2, 1 and ended it right there after they killed a dozen students and a teacher. And the scary thing is to be honest, they could have really shot a lot more people than they did. I think if they wanted to, maybe they just started to feel guilty, or I don't know what all the reasons. They definitely had more ammunitions, they had pipe bombs, they had all kinds of things. They could have had a shootout with police. But I'm sure the adrenaline ran out. And, you know, at the beginning it seems cool and crazy, it's shooting, and then, you know, after about a half hour you get pretty exhausted. I know Eric had shot a girl under one of the tables in the library, and the recoil from the shotgun broke his nose. And so, you know, you're feeling some of the pain, you're hearing people screaming and crying, and you're probably like, man, like if the cops end up shooting me or wounding me and I can't move, I'm gonna be in jail. You know, they both know if they live, they'd be in jail forever. And so I think they made sure that they didn't get caught by the police for that. Yeah, they would have graduated like a month later. Just such a waste, you know. So anyway, now I'll head over towards the area where Dylan was from. Eric basically grew up in a cul-de-sac, kind of not too far from here. Not like a real special thing, just a regular suburbs. But Dylan had like a house that's worth like $2 to $4 million right now, with an amazing background. So that's only about 10-15 minutes from here. So I'll head down there and maybe hike around some of the trails. And that's also the area where they got arrested for stealing some electronic equipment out of a van. So this was probably the route that he took, you know, to and from school, or at least near this area. So this area just behind me is where Dylan grew up. I'll go there in a minute. This is a really pretty park called South Valley Park, just in front of his development. And behind here, and this area's got all these amazing red rocks, kind of like Red Rocks Amphitheater. Anyway, I'll kind of walk through here and I'll give you a little bit of the history on their upbringing and where they came from. So just to give you a little bit about their history growing up, Eric Harris, who grew up, more in the suburbs near Columbine, about 20 minutes from here, his family, his dad was Air Force, so he had to move a lot. He moved at least 4 or 5 times by the time he got to Columbine when he was in middle school. And that was actually one of his biggest gripes, was that he had to constantly move and start at the bottom of the ladder, basically, where, he'd meet a bunch of friends, get kind of popular, and then it's like he got to start over again, right? Dylan grew up here his whole life. As far as I know, they bought that house in '78, so 3 years before he was born. He did have a brother a couple years older than him, so I assume he spent his whole life here, just in this amazing, beautiful area just behind me. And his main issue was that he was a smart kid and everything, but he was extremely shy. By the time he got into middle school and high school, he was like awkwardly shy. And he expressed more of things like wanting to be loved. He had a lot of poetry and things with hearts, and that was like his dream. So it's too bad, because I think if, maybe if he found the right girl or that kind of thing, it might have helped the situation. But of course, a lot of people, when you're in high school and you've got all these dreams of, this perfect girl and everything, it's just not realistic, unfortunately. Obviously some people ended up meeting a nice girl or guy, but not everyone. And so, yeah, that's a shame too. And so he just turned to rage. Eric seemed to be really just pissed off and kind of, I wouldn't say that he was the ringleader, but I think most people would think that if Dylan wasn't there, Eric might have did it on his own, but I doubt that Dylan would have did this atrocity on his own. So I'm not sure if that was true. Maybe Dylan would have committed suicide, who knows? But Eric had a lot of rage against everything. Fuck everyone, I'm the best, really narcissistic, kind of a psychopath. But at the same time, you see a lot of people in general who at that age are really pissed off. They both had older brothers. I know Eric's older brother went on to do good things, got a master's degree, I assume married, and had a good career. Dylan's older brother had gotten in some trouble with drugs or something around that time. I don't know really what happened to him. Most of the parents obviously kind of disappeared from public view to an extent. Except for Dylan's mom, has actually done TED Talks and been very vocal about the situation. I don't think the Harris parents have come out and said too much about it, other than obviously they're sorry and everything like that. So of course, what were the motivations, right? Besides being pissed off or not having, the girl you love. So of course, the bullying was one of the main reasons people assume this happened. And of course, I think it's part of it. Like, I think, a lot of people like to blame one thing. Like, it's either medication or guns or bullying, or because you can get guns. Like, they always want to have one thing. And it's really probably the combination of a lot of different things. And bullying was part of it, but not the whole reason. People are bullied every day and don't do mass shootings, so it's not the only thing. But they did report to have, quite a bit of bullying. But at the same time, I've seen that, Eric and Dylan also bully kids a little bit too. So although some people said, oh, they're at the bottom of high school, like the worst of the worst picked on, I kind of doubt that. I think they definitely got picked on, had some pretty bad shit, but I think a lot of kids did. I mean, Dylan was 6'3", and Eric was a pretty good soccer player and kind of athletic. He wasn't quite as big, he was like 5'7", but it's kind of unlikely that they were at the bottom of the bottom. And as far as I know, Eric, a lot of people said he was manipulative and stuff. And, he managed to have at least 1 or 2 girlfriends as far as I know. So I think he had enough social skills to kind of fend off some of the BS. Of course, Dylan being kind of shy and he hated the way he looked. I'm sure he would have grown out of it, become, a pretty big guy that was relatively attractive, and I'm sure would have found someone. And yeah, just a tragic scenario. Dylan's dad was originally a sculptor and then became an engineer, probably to make more money. And his mom worked with like disabled kids. So yeah, they were, middle upper class parents. And I assume Dylan's parents were they seemed like kind of like lefty Christians. And I'm guessing Eric's parents were probably, you know, moderate conservatives, just by guess, but nothing really extreme or anything abusive or anything unusual that I've seen or read about. You know, I don't think Eric had like big problems with his parents, except, you know, they did get arrested that one time, and there was some other issue with one of their friends who got in a fight. And so I don't think there was anything really unusual about their upbringing there. There was another slight miscalculation about them being part of the trench coat mafia. They did wear trench coats that day and had a couple friends that were with that group, but they weren't specifically like a major role in that little clique. They just had a couple friends. They were pretty much on their own, you know, devising most of these plans. Another big topic on this subject is about antidepressants. Eric was given an antidepressant, like maybe Paxil, about a year or so before the incident. I don't think there were any traces in his blood at the time, but he might have been using that. I'm not sure about Dylan. I don't think they had the medical records for him as far as that goes. But it's significant in another way because Eric was interested in the Marines. Now, I've seen something say that he, you know, kind of avoided them. Like they had contacted him and he had talked to him a couple times. And of course, the recruiters will keep trying to call you back to get you to recruit because then they get a bonus. But it seemed like he didn't mention that he had taken any medications, but his parents did. And then he was actually disqualified. And so I think it's significant in the way that even if he didn't really want to go into the Marines, sometimes when you get rejected from something, it also sucks. You know, even if he wasn't really seriously considering it, getting a rejection was probably not a good thing for someone in that angry of a state of mind. Just to go into a little bit of the mass shootings history and bombings and things, they obviously were not the first, right? Ironically, as I said, their main objective was to bomb Columbine. And in history, we all know of the mass shootings more recently, but in history, there's been a lot of bombings, and not just Oklahoma City. Like in the 1920s up in Michigan, a guy had lost his, you know, farm and his property because he didn't have enough money for the property taxes. Well, property taxes is what pays for schools. And so he got pissed off and blew up the schools. And he killed like 35 kids and about, you know, 8 teachers or something like that. And I'm sure maimed and wounded, you know, dozens more. It was, I think, the Bath massacre. And so that was, you know, in the 20s. And around that time, there was a lot of issues like labor strikes and disputes and a lot of political things. There was huge bombings and, you know, New York City and many other areas. So there's definitely been a big history of bombings in the U.S. and shootings. Since World War II, there's been about 29 shootings. I think that involves 5 or more people. The first one was after World War II. A guy in New Jersey just basically shot up the area around his house. He was pissed at his neighbors and some things and ended up shooting, you know, I don't know, like 6, 7 people. And the big one I remember growing up that was pretty infamous before Columbine was this guy, Charles Whitman, who in the mid-1960s went up to the University of Texas in Austin, and he went up to the tower on campus and killed about, I don't know, 18 people with his sniper rifle. So he was an ex-Marine, about 25 years old. He was married, but, you know, I guess the autopsies, like, they found maybe some tumor that might have interfered with his brain, but he ended up killing his wife and his mom and then shot another, 15 people from that tower before he was ultimately killed. This guy, Jack Graham, in 1955, killed 44 people. Wow, that's a lot. How'd he do it? Shooting? Nope. Bombing, and not in a building. He blew up the plane to kill his mom and killed everyone else, obviously. So these crazy things have been happening. Yeah, that guy was only in his early 20s, was married too, but his mom had kind of abandoned him in an orphanage when he was young, and he was pissed off about that and other things. I'll make another video about that and a few of the other cases in Colorado, but there's been a lot of these crazy things over the years that just people haven't really heard of before. And so every decade there's been, you know, a few shootings every decade. I think it began to pick up in the 80s. There was about 4 or 5 pretty famous ones. I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, like, you know, if I get angry, I'm gonna go postal, like go crazy and shoot someone. I had heard that saying for years, but I didn't realize it was actually a guy who walked into the post office where he worked and ended up shooting up a bunch of people. There was another shooting at a McDonald's that killed like a dozen people in LA or California somewhere. And so there's definitely been a lot of shootings over the years that just didn't get a lot of publicity. Now, of course, besides that one in Texas, that was a university. Obviously, Columbine was the first big, like, high school shooting that got a lot of news. But even about a year before that, there was a kid, I think in Kentucky, who shot up, you know, 4 or 5 people. So it's definitely been occurring. After the 80s, there was a few shootings in the 90s. And then, of course, Columbine was 99. And in the 2000s, there weren't really a big uptick. Of course, the biggest one was the Virginia shooter. A guy actually originally from Korea shot 30-some people at the University of Virginia. So that was a huge one, and a couple others. But it was really after 2010s until now where you've had quite an uptick in the amount of shootings. I'm not sure exactly why. Obviously, Columbine has some influence on some of these shooters, but some of it, you know, I mean, the world's changed in the last 15 years. There's a lot more social media stuff, which could be good or bad. It seems like more people are divided and angry about things. So, you know, it's tough to say exactly why. So I'll cruise through Dillon's neighborhood right now and then go to the other side of that development, which is another parking lot for another park. And that's actually where they got busted for stealing electronics from a van. Yeah, so this would have been probably the main way coming from the Denver area where Dillon would have come up, or Eric come to hang out with him, or anyone else. So yeah, kind of crazy. Here's coming down the road, looking at his house, coming down the road here. I mean, that house and that area around there, that is just insane. I mean, who grows up in a place that friggin' nice? And I think that is part of the story. I think it's like, you know, you came from a great background, you couldn't live in a better spot, and you've got the best opportunities at that time and in the future. But it's like, oh, I'm socially awkward and I can't, you know, fall in love with the girl I want. It's like, it's gotta be, I'm just so frustrated, I just gotta take out this anger. And so, yeah, that's the crazy part. Everything in your life's going fine except for a couple of the most important things, like not being shy, you know, being with a woman you could love, that kind of thing. So, yeah, just insane. But that's probably part of the story, because I think, you know, a lot of people growing up in pretty poor areas, they don't have as high expectations in life. Like their parents had, you know, worked at the local store and their dad, you know, did construction or whatever, and they had pretty basic lives. They didn't have that high of expectations anyway, but I imagine he did in that kind of situation. You just don't get a cooler place to grow up and explore, man. To be hanging out all these, you know, climbing up rocks, and gosh, what a fun games of hide and go seek around here too, huh? But just, yeah, just huge houses, and just, yeah, these are all $1 million homes now. They got it back in the late 70s for about $285,000 or something like that. But yeah, this has got to be some of the most prime real estate near Denver for sure. Yeah, I couldn't even imagine living out here, whether a kid or an adult, man. It's just so friggin' nice and not far from Denver. I'll be lucky if I get a $20,000 used trailer to retire in and some swamp in Arkansas or something someday. I mean, the way the economy is these days, Jesus Christ. I couldn't imagine what it'd be like to be a realtor out here selling Dylan Clayboyd's house back in the day. It'd be like, because maybe some people didn't know obviously exactly where it would be, and then people could come in with a bunch of money and could be like, yeah, it looks great, couldn't be better, I'll pay, you know, $1.5 million or whatever for it. And it's like, by the way, we just have one caveat. It's like, what? It's like, you know the Columbine massacre? Yeah. It's like, one of the kids grew up here. So I'm not sure if they got a discount for that, but yeah, that might be a little awkward for some people. But if I had personally gotten a good deal and had the money, I think I'd take a house like that if there was a good deal. So regardless of the history, unfortunately. Although that could be kind of sketchy too, because, you know, they had like 99 bombs or something, like the day they attacked, like between, you know, their cars. And I think most of the bombs were actually at Eric's house. And, you know, you could just imagine they were probably hiding things all over the place. And could you imagine if like you did buy like Eric's house and then like you're doing like remodeling and like you hit a pipe bomb or something, it blows up like, you know, half your house. So could be some liability there for sure. You know, this is his neighborhood. You can imagine there are probably a bunch of either him and his friends driving around, smoking pot, you know, talking whatever bullshit at the time, the girls they liked, what happened in school, or also their crazy plans to, you know, kill everyone at their school. And I'm sure it happened on, you know, these roads right around us that are just spectacular. So it was in this parking lot behind me where those two got busted in January of 1998. I guess about a year and 4 months before their massacre. And what they did was they went up north of Columbine and saw a guy's van. And I guess maybe they were in a parking lot or something and they just happened to either walk by. I'm not sure exactly, but I'm pretty sure Dylan actually initiated it, where, you know, they had kind of talked about it and they're like, let's go ahead. They'd seen like a computer and some electronics in the car. And so they broke the window and took all that stuff. And so they drove down here, which was probably, I don't know, 25 minutes away or something. It's only a mile, 1.5 miles from Dylan's house. So they probably didn't want to go there because their parents might be suspicious. So this is a big parking lot just around the corner. And a cop happened to be driving into the parking lot and saw him. And, you know, the cops are probably checking parking lots like this to see, you know, I mean, basically most of the people are coming here obviously to hike or to walk their dog or run or whatever, outdoors people. So if you see a couple teenagers with a bunch of electronics, you know, maybe they came here to rob another car in the actual parking lot. So that's probably one of the reasons why there's crimes here. And they got in a decent amount of trouble. They had to go through kind of like a youth outreach program, a diversionary track, so that, you know, they wouldn't get in trouble again. And so they had to do quite a lot of like meetings, counseling, classes, that kind of stuff. And they passed it, you know, which that's not really a surprise, right? You want to get out of trouble, you'll do whatever you have to. It doesn't mean you're sincere when you say like you've changed and all of these kinds of things. It just means that, you know, you did what you had to do to get your record scrubbed of crimes. But as far as I know, they were pretty pissed about this. I think especially Eric, but this was one of their other gripes towards the end, like to get back at the police. And Eric was just so narcissistic. He's like, this is America, land of the free. Like, well, if it's free, why can't I just steal some stuff from some idiot who left it in his car? It's like, okay, dude, that's like weird. But yeah, I'm just kind of walking around a little bit here, and yeah, just another awesome park. That open space one has all the red rocks, and this is just a big canyon with a bunch of deer here. And you can imagine that, you know, I'm sure Dylan's parents came here all the time to walk. And Dylan probably as a kid growing up, they probably came, and this would be the closest spot to do a walk, you know, as a kid. I don't know how much he did that as a teenager and adult, maybe not as much, but yeah, this would have been the areas that, you you know, his family probably did little picnics here at the picnic benches and, you know, took, you know, afternoon strolls after church or whatever. And yeah, I just, my environment in Buffalo, New York wasn't quite this nice. And I think I could speak for like 99% of everyone else in the world. It's not quite this nice. So now I'll leave the parking lot and head towards Rampart Range, which is the main area where they went to practice shooting at targets and everything else, right? So I'll do that. That's about a 40-minute drive from here, so a little bit of a ways, but obviously you couldn't shoot like machine guns and bombs and do all that stuff in this area because it's all residential. So it's not a surprise they had to drive a little ways. I actually know this area because I hadn't even been there yet, but I was looking for one of the closest roads near to Denver, kind of like out of the way where you could, you know, do dispersed camping and stuff. And I'd read on all the ratings of the area, this is a major shooting area and people riding ATVs and dirt bikes and trucks. So if you want like, you know, a quiet place to camp, this was not known as the place to go. That area has since closed to shooting, not right after Columbine actually, but maybe 2009 or something. But so I'm not sure exactly where they shot because that road's about 30-40 miles long all the way down towards Colorado Springs, so I'm not sure. And if the areas I showed you weren't nice enough, like they're also near one of the coolest reservoirs and parks south of Denver, which is Chatfield State Park. And there's a bunch of huge lakes there and areas you can walk your dog. And just on the north side there, you could actually take a tube and go all the way up to like Breckenridge Brewery, like halfway to Denver basically, on like a 3-hour tubing tour. I did that last summer. But yeah, this park's super nice here too, so one of the best recreation areas. And to the west of here, you got Chatfield Reservoir and Waterton Canyon, and that's actually a really pretty area. And that's actually where the Colorado Trail starts. It ends in Durango, but it starts over in that area. I've hiked up there for a few days and biked part of that too, and it's super cool. So just so much around here that's so cool. Eric actually just grew up on the north side of the reservoir, like just like a few hundred feet. He's on the south side of the development there in a regular house. So I didn't go over there. I mean, I could have driven over, but I think you get the idea. They also worked at a place called Blackjack Pizza, which is kind of not too far from where Eric lived, but I think that location is closed now. I looked on the map. They worked there for, I don't know, a year or so, and I know one of them was promoted to like manager, like shift manager, and they were, you know, seemed like good workers, although they were blowing off like pipe bombs and shit in the back of the pizzeria. And they also made kind of a trap or something because like people were coming through a fence, and so they kind of booby trapped it and also lit the dumpster on fire back there. So they're definitely troublemakers there as well. But it did say that, you know, they had some potential overall. I know early on Dylan had really good grades, like was in gifted programs in elementary and maybe middle school. By high school, he didn't really apply himself too much. But they were both really into computers and worked in the library and definitely could have had promising careers. There's no doubt about that. And of course, one of the other things about the tragedy itself is that, you know, obviously they're really pissed about being bullied, which was one of the main excuses. And it was the jocks, they said, that were doing that. And there was even one point in the shootings where they said, everyone with a white hat, stand up. Of course, no one did. And in the end, it's like they might have killed 1 or 2 people that played football, but it wasn't like, so it wasn't even like their killing spree necessarily eliminated like their biggest enemies. It was just a bunch of random kids, you know, in different grades. It was, you know, a few girls, a few guys. There was one black kid. It's just like they ended up taking out all of their anger on people that didn't, you know, had nothing to do with it. And so that's kind of one of the huge other tragedies about the whole thing. One interesting point about this, I heard them mention how, you know, there was some small fights in school, and I'd seen, I think Eric mentioned he wanted to you know, maybe fight these kids, but he didn't want to get sued. So there was like some shoving matches and maybe like someone punched someone in the face, but it probably would have been great if they just would have gone after school and maybe fought some of these bullies. And even if you lose, people still will have respect for you because they know that, you know, you'll have to fight them in the end. And so that might have blown off some steam. I'm not totally sure about that. And then as I mentioned about the Marines, it would have been great if he could have gone into the Army or Marines and ended up in like Afghanistan or somewhere where you could have taken out that aggression and somewhat, I couldn't say it's productive, but it's, you know, better than what happened to some innocent people here. At least he would have been fighting some combatants or terrorists or something like that. Or maybe he wouldn't have even seen any action, but at least he's in an environment with those kinds of people who are, you know, into that stuff. He'd been shooting guns. And quite frankly, I was in the Army 4 years and it's not like I loved it. You know, you kind of actually hate it because of the routine, because of the structure and the authority. And so he might have actually looked for alternatives. Like after I was in the Army, you know, you kind of look at different things like traveling around the world or other interesting things you could do with your life besides being pissed off, you know? So yeah, just such a tragedy. So right about to pull up to Rampart Range Road right now. So it's temporarily closed, I guess because it's just the end of winter, so it's not too surprising. But anyway, I'll take a look around real quick. So I'm guessing it opens in the next, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, maybe in May, because they probably don't want people getting stuck out here, any issues, because it's hard to get to with all the ice and snow still left over. But yeah, you can imagine they came up this road and probably didn't drive too far. Like you could probably, honestly, even from that parking lot right here, or any of these little stops on this road, you would go up and you could shoot anywhere. I mean, there's no one even out here now, especially obviously because that gate's closed, but there's not even anyone in this parking lot. So, you know, you come out here with shotguns, semi-automatic weapons, and just, you know, start shooting and enjoy yourself, and that's it. Yeah, there's no one out here. I mean, if I had a gun, you know, I don't think anyone would even know if I was shooting. I'm so far away from anything, so yeah, this is where they came out, right along here. You can see because it's kind of a downhill in the videos, and they were just shooting down into these areas at some bowling pins and other stuff and just enjoying themselves. And of course, planning a massacre. And so yeah, the last subject, of course, is the accessibility of guns, which, as we all know, isn't super hard in America. They were underage, so they got a couple guys to get some of the guns who were a little older than them, and I think there was another loophole through, like, if you at a gun show you might be able to sell some guns which doesn't like have the same length of background check, and yeah, those guys got busted. I think they did, those kids who bought them the guns, they did like a year of jail or something like that. So yeah, they were probably the only people that really face repercussions for the whole thing, because of course Dylan and Eric committed suicide. So it's not a surprise they banned the shooting, because everyone's just coming out here, motorcycles, drinking, and four-wheelers, and throwing trash everywhere. And so yeah, it's a shame some people ruin it for everyone, but that's how it goes. So just some of my own personal experiences at this time, because like I said, I was only a year older than them. I'm 44 now. They would have been, 42, 43 years old at this time. And sadly enough, I mean, their experiences and the stuff they talked about wasn't really so different than me or any of my friends, I mean, I was really pissed off at that time and went into the military. I mean, not pissed off about everything and not as maybe crazy as Eric, but, a lot of people were frustrated in high school and angry. And, you know, we made, you know, like small little like M80 bombs out of like Estes rockets. And we shot guns all the time when I used to go up to the Adirondacks as a kid. And, you know, I had a friend who mentioned he wanted to kill someone just to see, you know, what it would feel like. And so, I mean, I could see where this kind of thing isn't actually that crazy. So just to give you some numbers on statistics, about 4 million people every year graduate high school. 4 million, that's a lot. How many of those people are, you know, pissed off or angry or could be homicidal? Well, you know, I mean, even if it's just 1 in a million, that's still 4 a year. What if it's 1%? 1% of a million's like 10,000? So it's just a case that, you know, out of every population, you've got some homicidal people. And it's sad to say it, but it's true. You know, there's been these bombings and shootings and murders and things all the time. If you watch these true crime things, you see this kind of stuff all the time where people honestly just killed people because they wanted to see what it was like. You know, they're just bored or whatever. So sadly, there's not a lot you could really do about this. You could get rid of the video games, the mind-altering drugs, you know, try to stop bullying, which is impossible, and all of these other things. And it's just, sadly, these guys, you know, like I said, if they didn't meet each other, I don't know if this would have happened. I think, you know, Dylan definitely, I don't think would have done that on his own. And even Eric, I don't know, I think they both needed each other to do this. And, you know, sometimes in life, two people get together and yeah, something horrible like this can happen. But there's also other cases in history every day where, you know, so two people met and, you know, they got married and had a great family and kids. Or, you know, there's a time when Paul McCartney met John Lennon and they made the Beatles and it was a great band and everything would have been different maybe if they didn't meet. And so, just a sad combination. And like I said, there were other shootings at schools and things. This one took the cake. I think they knew that. They knew they had to be bigger and better. The Oklahoma City bombing had just occurred, so they're probably well aware of the Oklahoma City bombing. I mean, that trial was probably going on for a few years up until that they did their atrocity. And so they wanted to be infamous, and they did accomplish that sadly. Because, yeah, I never think 25 years later I'd be making a video about this, right? So anyway, I'll end this with some of the memorials for each of the students who were killed, as well as the teacher. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm going to do a few more videos in Colorado in general, some of the true crime stuff and historical things. I've still got a couple more months of videos for my Peru trip on motorcycle, but after that I'll come back and do some stuff about Colorado. So if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.